Hello, this is Al Judge. Welcome to another lesson from my book, From Photos to Art with Photoshop. In this lesson, we're just going to be familiarizing ourselves with the Photoshop Workspace. This entire area that you see when you open Photoshop is called the Workspace. And it has some important areas that we need to be more familiar with. The first one up here is the menu bar. Now, that is going to be a little different on a Mac than it is on a PC. All the images in my book were taken from Photoshop being used on a PC. And the shorter videos or refresher videos that I did were all done on a PC. But these longer narrated videos are being done on a Mac. But at any rate, on a Mac, the menu bar is going to be separate from the program screen, the workspace, as it is with any kind of Mac program. On a PC, this same menu bar would be right here where it says Adobe Photoshop CC. So it would be the very first thing at the top of the screen, and you have a Photoshop insignia over here in the corner. The next important area that we need to be aware of is the toolbar, which comes down the left side. And this is the default arrangement. You can change it. You can pull it off of here, put it wherever you want. But I prefer to keep it here, which most people do. You can also change it so it's two rows of icons rather than a single. And that's done by just clicking here with the double arrows to go back and forth, toggle back and forth between two rows and one row. And as you get more familiar with the program, you may decide one or the other works better for you. The toolbar is the main tools that you're going to use to manipulate things in Photoshop. And we're going to go into every group here on the bar as we proceed through the book. But I thought I'd start off by just mentioning that whenever you see a small triangle down here in the right-hand corner, it tells you there are more items, that is a group of icons and not just one. As you can see, I clicked on this polygon lasso tool and the icon changed. The default, the normal, is the first item in the group, which is the lasso tool. So when you first start Photoshop, these are the icons you'll see. But as you continue to use them, anytime you use a different icon, that's the one that'll show up for the group. Now it'll take you a little time to get used to which items are grouped together and know how to find them. But in the chapter we're going to do on the toolbar, I'll give you a few hints as to how to find things more easily. So we'll be talking about how this is arranged, each of these different groups of icons and what they do. And that will help you find the icon you need to do the operation you need. Now the next thing you need to know is that we have another bar up here under the menu bar called the Options bar. And if you'll watch this, I'm going to change to a different tool on the toolbar. And when I do, this will change. So right now I'm just going to click on the Type tool, and you'll see the icon for the Type tool is up here at the far left of the menu of the Options bar, and that these particular items are very specific to type. If I come back up where we were to the lasso tool, you'll see that the lasso icon is now the one to the far left, and there are different options up here. So every time you change a tool, that options bar is going to change. And it's going to change to be appropriate for whatever the tool is. And you can see there's quite a bit of variation. So the options bar is really a sub-menu for the toolbar. And it helps give you much greater control over what the tools do. So far we've talked about the menus. And I'll just click on a few of those so you can see there's a lot of things under each menu. And as we go through the lessons in the book, we'll learn many of these things, but not all of them. You won't need them all the time. But we will do enough that you'll become familiar with what the menu bar is and what the menu items are that you're going to need. So we have menu bar, options bar, toolbar. This area in the middle here where your image is showing, I'm calling the display area. I'm not positive that that's the term that Photoshop uses, but I haven't heard any other terms, so that's the one I use for this. So I call this the display area. Now, the other part that's very important is the panels area, and that's this down the right side. There are lots of panels, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. But there's also a subset here where you can stack different panels that you use from time to time in a minimized state. This particular one I like to keep here, and it's the history. So when I do something, I can always go back and find out exactly what steps I did, and I can back up to the exact step I want. So you can just call it out when you need it, and then as you see, I just click on this double arrow and it goes back to its spot here. And you can line up as many of these things as you like. But right now I'm going to talk more about the main panel areas. Up here in the far right corner at the top, we have a drop-down menu. And the default is Essentials. And that is a preset workspace. And I'll talk in a minute what a preset means. But we also have other presets, one for 3D, one for motion, one for painting, etc. And just to talk briefly about them, 3D is going to be a set of panels that particularly make it easier to work with 3D images. Motion is going to make it easier to work with video. Painting is sort of self-explanatory, but it's going to bring up a whole set of panels that are going to make painting operations easier. Photography is another setting that's going to have panels that are common to photographers and editing their videos. And typography is the final preset here on the list. And that's when you're working with text. This will be very helpful. So I'm going to first start off with what this Essentials Workspace means. I'm going to go to the menu item called Window. If I come down here, you'll see there are 3 items that are checked off in this area of the drop-down menu. First one is called Adjustments, and that shows up as a panel right over here. Second one is called Color, that's this panel here. Third one is Layers, and that's this panel. And this is going to be a very important area to us. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we go through the program. Now let's say, what if we switch over to painting, for example. When we do, you'll see swatches of color and you'll see brush styles. And we'll be talking a lot more about brush styles as we go through this. And you'll get a better idea of what these are. But it gives you panels that you're most likely to need when you're painting in Photoshop. Likewise, I mentioned typography, and you'll see there are all kinds of things that change your type, space out your letters, really customize your type. But you notice in most cases the Layers panel stays here because it's one of our most important areas in Photoshop. The other thing is that each of these panels has subpanels. So like, for example, we're looking at character right now in the typography area. And there's also a paragraph setting, which has certain tools to help you format your paragraphs. Likewise, down here, we have layers, we also have channels, which helps you divide your image into your color channels. And there's a subset called paths. We're not going to get into that. But just so you know, you can switch back and forth with these things. And like with so many other things in Photoshop, you can move things around as you wish. You can really customize your workspace. I can pull this whole layers panel out and put it anywhere I want. I can change the size of it. And if I want, I can just put it back in here and move it up or down, however I see fit. I'm going to go back to the Essentials Workspace right now. And one other thing that I want to talk to before we go too much further is you can change the entire appearance of this area. Photoshop calls this an interface. And you can change the interface color. To do that, click on Edit. Actually, I'm in the habit of working on a PC, and on a PC this would be Edit and then down to Preferences. But this is a Mac, and a Mac puts everything with preferences in a different area. So I'm actually off the screen of what I'm recording, but I'm clicking on the Photoshop, the word Photoshop, which is next to File on the menu bar. And when I click on Preferences, I come down to Interface, and Preferences screen pops up. There are several interface options. And if you just watch this area, as I click on each of these swatches, you'll see how it changes. And you may find in time that you really prefer one over the other. Most of my use with Photoshop, I've used the medium gray, and I always liked that. It just was very comfortable for me. But in doing my book, I found that my images show up better with the light gray. And so I've used that mostly throughout my images in my book and the different lessons and chapters. Again, all you have to do is click on a swatch and then click OK, and you're locked into that new appearance. So I'm going to go back there again and go to Preferences one more time, Interface, and I'm going to switch back to this light gray that I've been using. Okay, just for a quick review, we have the menu bar, we have the options bar, which is a subset or submenu for the toolbar. We have our display area, and we have our panels area with a number of presets that will change the panels that are available for different operations. Also, one thing I didn't mention here, I happen to have 4 images open in Photoshop at this time, and they're on tabs. So if I want to go from one image to another, I just click on the tab, and it moves to that image. This, we're going to talk more about this later, but this particular arrangement is very popular because it allows you the maximum size for the image that you're going to use. Some other arrangements where there's more than one image on the screen at a time, you don't have that full use of the area. The other thing that's showing here is I usually keep my rulers in my display area. And you can find the rulers here, View, and Rulers is checked. If I check that again, they'll go away. So you often see this is a normal display area. Like I say, I like to keep the rulers up most of the time because there's times when I'm working with something that I want to align something or I want to measure something. With rulers, you can just, if you have your rulers up, you just put your cursor up in the ruler area and you drag. and you can bring down a line to your image, a guideline. And you can use that from time to time to align things. And we'll talk about some other uses for it as we go through the different examples. So I'm just going to get rid of those. I can drag them back up here, or I can go to View and Clear Guides. It's another. So we're coming down. Rulers is there. We could uncheck that, get rid of rulers, or we could just clear the guides, and they go away. And the last thing I want to talk about in this particular lesson is creating a new workspace. So let's say, we have these presets up here for different things, but let's say you find that for your particular use for Photoshop, you have different panels that you use all the time. And we can save that particular arrangement of panels as another preset. We can create our own presets. So before I do that, I just want to show you here that this whole area, starting at 3D and coming down to Tool Presets, are panels that you can have open in your workspace. And all you need to do is just click on one of them. So let's say I want to have info showing up. This gives me specific data about color and any place in my image. So if I find I keep that up often, and I can come down here, and for some reason I say I like to have the notes up, I can also have that panel out somewhere. And again, if I find I use this all the time, I can come up to Window, Workspace, New Workspace, and I can name this new workspace and save it, and it'll be available to me on this drop-down menu. Now I'm going to call this Al's preset for this example, and I'm just going to click Save. Now you see it's up here, and it is now on the drop-down menu as a preset, just like these other presets. So again, I can switch back to any one I want. I just move to the motion one again, which is for video, and I can come up here and go to Al's preset to get back the panels I had. So now I'm going to click again to get rid of information or info, and I'm going to click again to get rid of notes. So we're now back to the Essentials Workspace. When you're new to Photoshop, it's very easy to accidentally close one of these panels. And if it's a panel you've been using, you need to know how to get it back quick. And the way to get it back is this window drop-down menu. And again, every panel is in here. All you got to do is find the name and just click on it, and it'll show up. And again, click again, and it'll go away. So it's very easy to find your panels, to load them wherever you want. I'm going to click on Clone Source this time. So now Clone Source is available to me as a minimized panel that I can select by just clicking on it, and I can minimize it again by hitting the double arrow. This allows me to keep a neat workspace and optimize the amount of space available for my images. Now I will point out that this particular screen you're looking at now, the display area is smaller than the default. For these videos, I resized the workspace. You can see I can move it, change it quite a bit. It's actually wider, but I resized it so that my menu items show up so you can read them, you can see the tools, you can see things better, and in a lot of cases, the images, I don't need that full width. It depends on the image, but in a lot of cases, this works just fine. So with that, I'm going to conclude this lesson, and just one last time, just refresh everything. This is the workspace, and there are 5 essential parts to it: the menu bar, the toolbar, the options bar, which is a sub-menu for the toolbar, the display area, and the panels. Panels are accessible by the window drop-down menu. You can turn as many on and off as you care to. And the other important point is to remember the workspace presets that you can change depending on what you're working on. So that concludes this lesson. I hope you found this valuable, and it'll get you more comfortable with the program quickly. And I'll see you again in the next lesson.